Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, CEO and President of Brokerage up from realestatecoach.com, and I'm delighted to welcome one of my longtime friends, Khrisna Malyala. He is the CEO and founder of TLC Engine, and you may not have heard of this, but I've been in love with his tool, what his company's been doing ever since. When did you first come out? About 5 years ago? Is that about right?
I can't believe it's been 6 years, Bernice.
It's been 6 years already. Wow. So the thing that, what TLC Engine does is imagine that your clients or your buyer clients are trying to decide between which two houses are best. And they want to be able to figure out commute time, utilities, condition of the property. I'm going to have to buy a roof in 3 years or 10 years or 50 years, all those things. And his tool evaluates that. So Khrisna, welcome. We're going to be talking about today, understanding the intersection between technology and service. And Khrisna, could you say a little bit more about what your tool does? Because you were showing this to me, and you're right you've got a number of MLSs that are on board, and you've got at least one local big MLS in California and in Florida that's coming on board. So I think once those come on board, you're going to see a lot more business coming your way. But tell me, what else can your tool do? Because you were showing me about searching for kitchens. Talk to me more about that.
Yeah, well, so the whole product actually came from my own home buying experience, right? I think that we as consumers are especially, I'm an agent myself, so I want to disclose that in terms of what's going on. And what I really find when I was working with my clients is that, and even my own search, was trying to find this balance between cost and lifestyle. And so lifestyle comes down to is that on my side, right, I would sit there and say, like, I'm the left side of the brain is sitting there saying, working all the numbers, which is, hey, how long is my commute? What's that going to cost? Is my taxes going to go up? What's the mortgage in terms of what's going on, right? We start to see this as even as mortgage rates fluctuate, right? Is that maybe we can afford more or less depending on what's actually happening in the market, right? So that's one side of it. The second side of it is, from my wife's point of view, or even other people's point of view, hey, what's the school districts look like? What's the kitchens, right? Because, whenever we take a look at search, right, we're spending so much time sitting here and clicking on each property and then saying, show me the picture of the kitchen, right? 7 clicks away. Well, why don't we just sit there and see it in a display view and say, show me all the pictures of the kitchens and show me the kitchens with the granite countertops? Because my wife was like, I want the kitchen to be amazing, right? And then I was like, wait, okay, I want that too. Perfect. We favorited those, and then sit there and said, does it actually have a pool in the background, and how big is the pool? So the beauty of it is that it allowed us to sit there and bring my left side and right side stuff together, but find the ideal home, right? And what's amazing about the technology is AI allows us to take a look at thousands and thousands of properties, but then minimize it down to 10 homes, right? Easily to take a look at those. Because you and I know we don't want to be sitting there showing all these different homes and then finally saying, oh, that didn't work out because the kitchen looked horrible, right?
Well, the other thing that, that I love about your tool that it does is like, okay, I've identified something in this area, but there may be a comparable area that has the same level of schools, same commute times that I don't know about, and it will tell me about it.
Well, So yes, you brought up a really good point, right? Is that most of people, the way we currently do home searches is that we look at neighborhoods and then we research all that stuff down, literally work on all our way down to an Excel spreadsheet to figure out the cost, and then only to find out we can't afford it, or oh, there was something else that's gone long, right? The commute was so long in terms of what's going on. And so AI can help that problem. And so it's great. The optimization problem is a great problem for computers to solve. But trying to decide between 10 homes, that's that service, right? That's what agents can do. Agents can understand that, right? I mean, I just had a client that did their own search in terms of what's going on. I looked at their houses, I heard what they said, and then I showed them 4 other homes the next time that they wasn't finding on their own site. And then when I showed them those houses, they're like, we like every single one you showed. And that's where service comes into play, right? It's that balance that we need to take a look at. And that's where we need to take a look at, right? AI it's an augmented solution. I mean, before our call, we both talked about this, is on the buyer side, there's about 100 steps, right? we don't even show our values that way to sit there and say, what are those 100 steps, right? Because most consumers sit there and go, hey, I found the ideal house. All I want you to do is open the door, right? But that's just the beginning of it, right? That's just the beginning of it. And I think that this is where, AI and augmented, we can take a look at those mundane tasks, right? The CMA aspects of it, the other aspects of negotiation, about the moving, all of those other stuff, right, that we talked about.
All the things. It's one of my friends, reminded me there's not a piece of technology in the world that can deal with the fact that a pipe just exploded in your house on your new listing and it's vacant and you got water flowing out on the street at 2 a.m. Sorry.
Right.
That is something a human's going to have to take care of because the AI isn't going to do it.
AI is not going to do it, right? It's about that we didn't get the paperwork on time, right? It's about, like, there's so many little tasks that we do that I think that what we're seeing in the marketplace, right? And we talked about this is even on the seller side, right? There's almost 150 tasks that we have, right?
Because you've got all the listing stuff ahead, it's, putting on
Right.
MLS and then, the marketing set, the marketing, the sign, the lockbox, all those things.
And we're starting to see little companies attack each of those, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that what we're going to see in the near future is how is that convergence, right? So we're seeing a very interesting flow of convergence from either the MLS level, right, in terms of companies like mine, of saying, hey, let's tackle that from an MLS level or an association level. We're starting to see that in broker levels, right? So, you see Remax with Booz, you see KW with Command, you see Realogy with their, Zip platform and other aspects that they're putting together, integrations of companies like First to take a look at it, right? And so, and then you'll see it at the agent level, right? And I think that we're just trying to find that balance. But then the question really comes down to is we talked about this, is that we don't want to become super predictive, that we're always just chasing the next lead, and it just becomes.
But, I want you to share an experience you had, because I feel a column coming on about this. But is AI the next version of ambulance chasing? And we talked about what happened, and, somebody dies and then you get all these emails, are you ready to sell your house? I mean, that's ambulance chasing because people get the public records.
Yeah.
But you experienced it in terms of buying a car and replacing the HVAC system on your house. And it's astounding. What did you experience? Because this is where this can go for real estate, and it's going to be a huge problem.
Right, and we talked about this, right? Is that one of the things I wanted to bring up is, Alex, Alex from 1000 Watt, Borrero.
Oh, Brian Borrero, yes,
So Brian was saying, the events that happen when we buy our houses are so rare, right? They're so rare, and we brought this up. The subject is because I had my grandparents pass away, and it's such a rare event that we as agents want to provide amazing touch points and service, right? But at that exact moment, I don't need you to sit there and say, hey, your house is worth this much. We saw that your grandmother died. Would you like to sell it? You're like, what? And so I think that the experience that I actually had recently in terms of what I did was my car died. And I needed to buy a new car. So I went to a couple of different sites, out there, right? And I went to TrueCar because they tell me, kind of like, the AVMs that we have out there, how much other people paid for their car. So I put my name out there and I put in different models because I wanted to know all this other stuff, right? I started this search on December 1st of last year, because I was like, great deals are going to happen at the end of the year, only to get spammed to death and get phone called to death. And all I was asking for is, how much is the car worth? Right?
And how many total did you get between your HVAC and your car issue?
So overall, like 550 emails for the car and over 100 on the HVAC system, because my HVAC died in the middle of the winter, and they knew that I was like, how much of an emergency it was, and they're like, well, this guy doesn't have this guy it's going to be freezing in New Jersey. We can charge him whatever we want because we've got him emotionally, right? I'm like, no, just and it was just such a bad experience, right? And it just like, we just got calls after calls after calls, and even trying to get off of them, right? This is really where we need to just find the balance, right? Is that, I still get calls, like I already bought a car, right? But I don't need to tell 20 other people, hey, I bought a car, leave me alone, right? It just
And
doesn't
that's what happens.
right?
These people keep, they keep contacting us. It's interesting in terms of, when my brother and my husband and I put everything into a family trust, and immediately I got like 12 or 13 "we'll buy your house" letters. Probably 70% of them are from individual agents. But what I love it, they addressed it to the Ray family, which is my brother's middle name.
Yeah.
And then they don't, they don't get the names right most of the time, so they didn't even do a good title search. And I want to circle back, though, Khrisna. I want to ask you a question about what the experience with your grandparents. And what if I sent you something that says, I saw that you really, recently lost a family member. One of the things you're going to need in terms of selling the estate is what the property value was at the time of that person's death.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. Please use it. And I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is exactly what I was talking, when we talked earlier, right? Is the humanness, right? We're human. We can't automate everything. And I think that having that touch point of even going one step further to sit there and go, hey, I knew that person. Oh, she was part of this community, or, some other aspects of it, right? But I think that when we take a look at our sphere, right, we need to make sure that we're not just using a sphere as CRM and just saying, like what Jeff Love always says is that don't drip on me, right? He always sits there and says, just don't drip on me, right? And that's the feeling, right? That because the fact that it's so rare, I think that it's more important to keep that human connection. And this is what we were saying, right?
And I want to go back to what you just brought up, this business about your database. You really need 150 people who will send you business, and you'll have more business than you know what to do.
Oh, yeah.
But that means that you're interacting with them at least once a month personally, either on their Facebook page, a phone call, a face-to-face. And then when someone in that group dies, you say, I saw that you posted on Facebook. You're not someone who's random. You're someone, and this comes back to the notion of give to get marketing. You give, and and even if they don't work with you, or if they do, they're not going to sell, they're going to keep it in the family, they still need that information at the value at time of debt. Here's the comparable sales. Here's all the documentation. Use it, as you need it. And if you need other help, I'm happy to give it. Yeah. And one of the things you could do that they probably would appreciate, a lot of times, just having someone's house cleaned after they've lost someone. Mm-hmm. So, just little mundane things, or, do a little something for them. Yeah. Says, I care about you,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, that there's so many people who tout this, right? I think that Joe Rand from, he was just talking about it in his book, right? And in talking about that, at the end of the day, right, I think that, we are a belly to belly business, right? We are that intersection. I think the millennials are a little bit like, a little bit more distant, right? In terms of that. But I still think that we need to create a connection. And
well, they are and they're not, because, they may be a little bit more distant in terms of how they interact, in terms of, being face to face, because they're not as comfortable with that. Yeah. But what's happening with the next generation, when we've got TikTok and these other crazy, the kids coming up, man, no, they're in front of the camera. They're they want the interactions. These they're all video. They don't have this call reluctance or video reluctance that Gen X has, or a lot of the older millennials have. One of the things that we talked about, and I think this was really an interesting point that you made. We see that when we were prepping for this, you said you see a new kind of MLS emerging that's different from what we have right now. There are several players in this area. Where are they taking this?
Well, so I think that it goes to this idea that we talked about, is that the nice thing about AI is that we're starting to produce larger data lakes that's helping understand data accuracy, but also understanding the person who is in that house overall, right? And now we can actually track that over time. And so that's one of the big things that we're really seeing, right? So when you take a look at companies like Remine, taking a look at HomeSnap, taking a look at products from, First American Data, DataTree, the Black Knights, the Realist that we have from CoreLogic, so RPR, right? I mean, like all these amazing tools, right? But what's awesome has happened is in the last 10 years, each of them has collected a lot of data regarding sales in terms of, valuations, and the valuation models are even getting, even getting better and better, right? And the issues that we'll see in that is that new MLS, right? Is that currently the way it was is that you have MLS search, you have tax records, and then you had other types of data that was separate regarding the consumer, and we're starting to see all of those combined together, right? And so I think that each of the players are trying to one up them in terms of finding heat maps, who's most likely to sell, right? In terms of what's going on. And that data is becoming better because the reason is that we've taken siloed data, right? In terms of those, what we talked about, the 100 to 150 steps that we talked about on either side, right? And then integrating that into a single platform. And I'm really excited about that. And I think that there's a lot of players, not only the ones that I named, right, but there's even new entrants that are coming in that's going to help us with that efficiencies, right? But we need to then make sure we find that balance, right, between creepy and hey, valuable, right? And I think that that's the most important thing. But it really comes down to being human, right? And I think that that's what we're talking about here today. Is that the divide of how AI can automate those mundane tasks, right? But also making sure that human element is there, right? Because how many times have you gone in and you've seen the AVM be completely off, and it's because in that AVM doesn't have that they fixed up their bathrooms, redid the tools, they put a new HVAC system in, and they did their basement, right? I mean, these are all the things that I have done in my personal house, right? So the market value that I see out there is completely off because me as an agent, you're not physically seeing those real elements, right?
Yet an agent who knows the market will walk in and say, oh yeah, this house is worth this much more than what the AVM is saying because of this.
Right.
One of the other things I wanted to talk about is there's been this conversation about how AI is going to reduce the amount of cost involved in the transaction. Where do you see the cost being reduced? You talked about something called convergence.
Yeah.
It's where these two fields are coming together, as personal service and with the AI. But what else is happening there? It's certainty versus uncertainty. Could you say more about that?
Yeah. So I think that whenever you take a look at, again, because it's such a rare event that we buy a house, right? I think that it makes a big difference whenever you're taking a look at it, and that uncertainty is what causes, we're like, oh, it's such a scary thing. Like we've already said it, right? There's hundreds of steps involved, right? And so you as a typical consumer might not know all those steps, but it's a pretty long process, and it's hard to take a look at it, right? And I think that also we're looking at what I mean by that is if we know as a seller when we're selling our house, the most important thing we need to know is how much money we're going to get at the end of that, right? Of that process. It doesn't, like, price is one thing, but it's like, okay, what's my net proceeds? But the only reason we need to know the net proceeds is because we need it as a down payment for the next house. So the question that we're seeing is, I like what Brad Inman said is that by having the iFunders that are coming into the play, right?
And this is a brand new term, this iFunder, and he's referring to companies that will buy. So, so say I need to sell my house before I can buy another one. And then, then I'm looking, do I have to rent? Do I have to do a lease back? I mean, contingent sales are a huge mess. They've been
huge.
Yeah.
45%.
And what it does is they buy your house, they give you the cash, they've qualified you for a mortgage, then you will get title to the house when your other house closes, and they'll put that new mortgage on your new house. They get their money back. They charge a fee for doing it, but they get the mortgage and title, which is where the profitability is for them.
And so this is where we were talking about the convergence, right?
Yeah. So 2% fee for some of them, different models here.
Right. But if you can start to take a look at like different models from where we see from Redfin giving 1%, right, on the sell side, right, versus the typical amount. Or if you even see that on the buy side, right, because the fact that you're integrating. So right now, like the convergence that I'm talking about is it was Del Preti that
Michael Del Preti, yeah,
where he was just saying that we're starting to see the convergence of mortgage, title, insurance, moving, right? Some of these other aspects all into a bundled service, right? In terms of what's going on. And then that's going to help reduce like typical cost to move that the CEO of Zillow was saying is about 15%. And they're going to tack on, another 1.5 in terms of the convenience of that, right? But what we're seeing is other products such as like Divvy, no money down, and some of the iBuyers, Open Door, and other stuff, right? This is all creating the speed, because if we reduce if you can reduce the uncertainty and you have very assurance that, hey, no matter what happens, the house is going to sell, right? And I know I'm going to get that money. That's what's going to help create velocity. And based off of that, if I'm providing you these other services in a digital format, right, where I put in information once in one platform and it automatically fills in my mortgage, it automatically fills in my title, it automatically.
And let me get you to pause right there, because when we were preparing for the show today, you popped up a screen, and so you were over on Zillow and said, oh, I'm interested in a mortgage, and you fill out all this information. Then it takes you to one site, when the mortgage sites, you have to fill it all out again. And you go to another mortgage site to get the second rate, you got to fill it out again.
Exactly.
This is what's wrong with the process right now.
This is what's wrong with the process right now, right? And so the thing really is that it's a horrible experience, right? It's because the reason is that they're all disjunct, and I think that that add costs, right? At the end of the day, that whole process just to do all that stuff, there's costs involved, right? So if you can automate all of that, and you can help save and make that decision for the consumer, right? And these are the things that TLC is working on, right? Is that how can we use AI to even pick the best mortgage for you so that you can sit there and integrate that in, right? And we talked about this, is that once you start to take a look at that, you can start to squeeze all of that together and pass along that savings back to the consumer. And I think that's what we're going to be seeing in the future. And that itself is then going to create velocity, right? That's what we're looking for. And I believe that once that transformation happens, we're going to start to see finally the switch of year over year, 5.5 million homes to even more homes, because now people aren't so scared of, oh, I can't have that contingency, right? That's 40% of the market. So if we remove the contingencies, it's going to create velocity, right? And then you talk about affordability when you combine mortgage stuff with like companies like Unison or Divvy that's helping you with the down payment or zero down, right? Now you're starting to take a look at affordability too. And this, it's coming with a new model. So we're going to start to see a lot more velocity that happens. And hopefully that's going to create more transactions. So people agents are so worried about the squeeze of the commission, but because of the fact that we're creating more transactions, that's actually going to keep your, keep it the same. So I think that you have to look at it both sides, right? There's a give and take. And I think that's where I see the huge opportunity for all of us as agents but the most important that we all talk about between you and me, Bernice, is that being human. And I think that it's a very scary thing, but let's use AI to help automate those things, but let's not become ambulance chasers at the same time. And if we can find that balance, that's where you're going to win as an agent.
And this is one of the things I love about you and your model, Krishna, because you've always kept sight. There's a lot of technologists are out there trying to sell us. Well, they're going to disintermediate us. They're going to AI is going to take over. No, it's still belly to belly, and it's that we need to work with these tools with the human touch. So we've been visiting with Khrisna Malyala. He's the founder and CEO of TLC Engine, which you can see on top of his head there. Yes, thank you. And Krishna, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thanks so much, Bernice. I absolutely love our conversations, and I'm looking forward to our next one.
I am too.